Okay, great. Well, I think we'll get started now. Want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Ryan Tuttle. I work for Euromonitor International. We are a global market research company based out of London with offices in many countries around the world. We focus on a lot of different industries throughout commerce. I specifically focus on our consumer finance system, which is primarily comprised of consumer payments as well as lending. And with me, I have three excellent panelists today. So I'm going to give them a moment just to introduce themselves, and then we will get going on our topic of the day, which is checks and electronic payments. Jason, I think you're on mute.
Good afternoon from Fort Myers, Florida. My name is Jason Estes. I'm the president and CEO of iCheckGateway.com. We focus on bringing together ACH and credit card processing into a single platform and offer a host of peripheral payment technologies that businesses can use to get paid by their customers. I'm also excited to share with all of you that we were published in the top half of the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list that was released yesterday.
My name is Travis Powers. I'm Vice President of Partner ISO Relations with Crosscheck. We're a national check processing and guarantee company throughout the U.S. I handle basically all the ISO division for us throughout the U.S., some in Puerto Rico, and we're also a fully licensed and bonded collection agency throughout the United States.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Evan Albert. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Seamless Checks, and we are a payment gateway and processor that allows businesses to accept and send bank payments online.
Great, thanks everyone. Just a little bit of ground rules here. We're going to talk about kind of a few main points that are listed in the description for this panel, and then we're going to kind of hit on a couple of miscellaneous topics, and we're going to leave questions for the end. On the right side of your screen, there should be a Q&A, polls, chat, and community area. If you could enter any questions that you have in that Q&A section on the left part of there, that would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, I think we'll get started here. Our first topic is the ease of transitioning from paper checks to electronic payments. And I'm going to throw this first one to Jason and say that, payments are very sticky, and we know there's a lot of inertia in payments. What is it about electronic payments that can help ease this transition?
Considering everything that we've been through for almost the past 2 years, I think merchants are seeing more than ever how important it is to accept payments online. And there's several benefits available from the merchant's point of view. I'm hearing a little bit of a feedback, though. If everyone could mute, that might help. There are several benefits from the merchant's point of view to transition to electronic payments, Ryan, but you're right, they are sticky from the consumer's perspective. And I think it's all about convenience, visibility, and control. Once a consumer moves away from mailing a paper check and they see how easy it is to submit payment at midnight or from various locations abroad while they're traveling, I think it's hard to go back. Further, having that visibility or control over their account is very appealing. They can track their usage. They can confirm that they're being billed appropriately, view their past payments, store payment methods to make it easy the next time they have to make a payment next month. Or they can even enroll in some type of auto pay program where they can just set it and forget it. So I think these are some of the reasons why consumers are drawn to these self-service payment options and why they are continuing to use them.
Great. And what sorts of other benefits exist that could incentivize folks to make that switch from paper checks to electronic payments?
From the merchant's point of view, offering self-service e-payment options can really speed up their cash flow. There's no more waiting on a paper check in the mail, hoping that it comes in the mail. Reconciliation can be automated. No more opening invoices or scanning checks or driving them to the bank. No more manually updating customer accounts, to signify who is paid, who hasn't paid. And a lot of these solutions that are provided by vendors are hosted or turnkey solutions. So these merchants can get up and running very easily. They don't have to have their tech staff involved to build or deploy these things. And at the same time, they'll see benefit there in reduced PCI scope or other regulatory compliance burden. So merchants can offer convenience, visibility, and control to their customers, while at the same time reducing their own burden, risk, and overhead. It really sets up a win-win type situation for all the parties involved.
Great. Evan, Travis, do you have anything to add to that?
Well,
Yeah, I think that, one of the biggest hurdles that businesses face when trying to transition to electronic payments is the documentation and the underwriting requirements typical of traditional ACH. We find that most merchants, they really don't know the difference between ACH and check processing. They know that at the end of the day, they want to be able to debit a bank account and have those funds credited into their account. And, this is what a merchant would get with check processing. They would get instant onboarding, no transaction limits, same-day deposits, bank account verification, and customers can enjoy the comfort and familiarity of writing a paper check with the convenience of not having to mail it, which is why, check processing is a great option and a great stepping stone for merchants looking to transition to electronic payments without having to deal with the underwriting hurdles, of traditional ACH.
Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid model.
Right.
I want to shift gears here and talk a little bit about payment security and privacy. Obviously, these are very top of mind. I think I saw in the news that there was a pretty large data breach recently that has exposed a substantial number of social security numbers. I think that was just this morning. So obviously, we're constantly thinking about payment security. Travis, on the consumer end, most consumers are reasonably well acquainted with some of the protections they get from cards and checks. But when you start talking about ACH, wires, and other implementations like Zelle, I think we've all probably heard the horror stories of people sending money to a random recipient, maybe one digit wrong on a phone number, and they've got no chargeback abilities. So there's a whole potential nest there. What sorts of security and privacy needs are we going to be giving up, and what do we need to build out with this payments transition?
Well, I think, account validation is probably key factor for a lot, and I'm talking about for the consumer and both for the merchant, because I think it goes both ways. Or, there, as we all get more familiar with Zelle and Venmo and all these P2P transactions, there's still the B2C B2C and C2B and B2B transactions that do need to happen and want to happen as we move towards the electronic side. One of the biggest issues that we face is that many of the ACH on that side, it's governed by Reg E, which actually strips a lot of the merchants from having that protection that they have in the Check 21 or just paper check world. There's 500 years of check law that goes back, that protects a merchant from taking that physical paper check. And as we move forward, as Evan had kind of stated, with more of a hybrid model, making that feel more like a electronic payment, when you stroke a check in today's world and give that to a merchant deposit, the only way that that's going back is if a consumer then goes to the bank and files an affidavit of forgery saying I didn't write that check in that process. But I know that one of the issues that you face as a merchant is you're letting things go out the door. Could be high ticket dollar. We provide a guarantee, in our company for that merchant to make them feel good. We're doing the validation on the front end. Is this a good check? We're bouncing off several national databases. It's a complex problem with a very, very simple solutions in some instances, but we have to look at each individual merchant and each individual consumer on what's best for them in that situation and present solutions that Jason talked about earlier. It's making that electronic, making it easier, giving the consumer the ability to do it anytime they want to make that purchase online. But the reality is that there's still it takes a consultative approach from either the sales, the ISO standpoint of looking at the merchant and going, what's best for the merchant? Because it's not always, ACH is not always the answer, but sometimes it is absolutely the answer for the merchant.
Yeah, I think from the ACH point of view, account validation can greatly reduce the likelihood of receiving a return. And, in fact, it's going to be required for web originated transactions based on the new NACHA rule that's coming out. But apart from account validation, user authentication is also very helpful. Customers can be validated based on business data rules or even through online banking authentication providers. But regardless of what strategies you put in place, returns are still going to happen. They're not going to be eliminated 100%. They will be significantly reduced, but you still will have some returns. So equally important, I believe, is how do you handle those exceptions? And so as soon as a return is detected, that data needs to be readily available to the merchant and or the software vendor to be able to act upon it quickly. They need to know what it was, when it was, who it was, how much it was, and why it failed. And so the key, I believe, with the ACH component is to validate on the front end and then have automated exception handling on the back end to engage the appropriate business protocol or collections process quickly.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this yesterday. When you think about things like faster payments, they're being built with a lot more message capabilities. So there's a lot more of that information that can be passed back and forth with the transaction. I think there's a lot of potential for informing both the merchant side and the consumer side better of, what's going on with my payment, and it doesn't necessarily get stuck in a 2-week wire or ACH kind of window, especially for international payments as this capability is being built out around the globe and particularly in Europe. So I think that's really a critical thought, thinking about not only, AML, KYC considerations, account authentication, but also the security and confidence that comes with knowing that your payment still exists and is out there and didn't just disappear into a bunch of ones and zeros that nobody knows where it went. Kind of hitting on our third topic here, thinking about how checks and e-payments can be used alongside one another. Evan, I want to ask you, thinking about some of the more consumer-facing, high-value ticket applications, can you talk a bit about how checks and payments can be used alongside each other, and how does that fit in with Check 21?
Yeah, sure. So, we're seeing an increase in the number of available payment methods merchants are accepting both online and in store, right? So while most B2C transactions are occurring via credit card, most B2B transactions are still happening via check payment or bank payment, right? So a quick serve restaurant that accepts mostly credit card for their in-store transactions will prefer to take a check or a bank payment over the phone for their catering orders. Accepting checks are still cheaper, and they provide merchants with the best protection against chargebacks, like Travis mentioned earlier. And this makes it really attractive for ISOs and ISVs as they can capture additional sales volume, hence, leading towards increased revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the idea of restaurant catering or kind of using different payments for different types of parts of the business, whether it's wholesale or retail, is really a piece of flexibility that this can provide. Jason, do you have any thoughts on that? I know we've been talking about it a bit kind of in our prep sessions.
Yeah, I think the beauty is that this transition doesn't have to be an all or nothing type situation. Most providers offer those hosted solutions so they can be deployed and stood up in tandem with the existing process of the business in a complementary way. So in a face-to-face environment, scanning the paper check at the point of sale creates an easy funnel on a better way to handle those transactions electronically. In the online environment, though, making these tools available to the customer is appealing. And over time, as long as it's easy and the learning curve is low, I think more customers will start to use it. And considering the many benefits from the merchant side, it might behoove them, to offer some type of incentive or discount for the customers to go that route, at least in the initial transitional period. So they can run side by side and over time move from the more manual processes to those that are more automated and streamlined.
Yeah, Check 21 is really. Check 21 is. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Travis, I think it'd be useful to think about Check 21 and the ACH world and kind of what are those advantages for Check 21 that it has over ACH in some ways.
Well, as I kind of stated earlier, Check 21 has, it's evolved over the last 20 years. I mean, it was started really, Check 21 had been kind of talked about for the last 30 years. What really pushed it forward was 9/11, when we grounded all the planes. It used to be that you were flying paper checks all over the United States. Every night there was hundreds of planes up in the air moving checks from Fed district to Fed district to get that done. And when we grounded all those planes, we had to have an alternative, and the IRD, the image replacement document on Check 21, really took over of moving that electronically. And as we've kind of gone along, we've taken for many merchants, we've literally taken the merchant window that they used to have at their bank all the way to the point of sale. So we've electronified that check at the point of sale, but it's gone so much further. And with that acceptance, merchants have gotten a little bit, they've moved towards the ACH side in this business. And it's all the tracking, all the things that you can do with the back end, making the process easier from the accounting standpoint. It's benefited merchants from an operational standpoint. And at the same point in time, when you keep it in the Check 21 world, as I kind of stated earlier, you keep a lot of the protections for those returned items when they do have a problem. And the fact is, as you kind of mentioned it earlier, is that you get that return data so much quicker. And when you do have a problem, the quicker you start collections on a bad item, the better chance you have of collecting it. It doesn't attrit as quickly.
Absolutely. All right. I think that really hits on some of those main ideas we wanted to touch on. I think I have a couple of additional questions that I want to ask, but I want to point to those watching to feel free to drop any questions you might have for the group in that Q&A side. It doesn't look like we have any so far, and we're more than happy to kind of touch on any points that you're interested in. So please get those in as we talk about a few more ideas here. And yeah, we'll just kind of continue on. Jason, I wanted to ask you, I think we've talked a bit about the merchant side, a little bit about the wholesale side. What are some of the key considerations that we should be thinking about for B2B payments in this space?
Yeah, B2B transactions are still widely dominated by the paper check. And for them to move to e-payments, I believe ACH is a perfect fit. If credit cards are the only option, it's really hard to justify the jump to paying the corporate card interchange rates, which are some of the highest rates on the grid. So ACH offers a cost-effective way to go about that without compromising any of the ability to automate or integrate. And with regards to returns, B2B transactions on the ACH rails can be processed under the CCD entry class code. And so this significantly reduces that window of liability on when a return can be received. It takes it down from the typical 60 days to a 3 business day window. So you still have the advantage of dealing with those returns in an automated way, but that window of liability is drastically reduced. And still the process can be streamlined in a much more cost-effective way than perhaps credit card as an alternative.
Absolutely. Travis, I wanted to ask you a bit about ISO and ISB considerations. How should we be thinking about these in terms of the transition?
Well, there is a big opportunity in this area, especially for Check 21 and the ACH side. And depending upon the industry, there's the ability to go out there, add value to the customer or to your merchant base of being able to move those paper checks, possibly offering ACH. adding a discount rate to those. We see it today of being able to just simply move check 21, adding 15, 20 basis points of margin to the ISO for simply just offering the service and not having them make that trip to the bank, being able to do file feeds to their accounting backends because we're moving it electronically. There's a lot of added benefit to electronifying those items that normally would just be taken to the bank directly, and having, as they're entering the check, it's picking up that information, often in a Carlar type environment, and then taking that information, putting it to the back end of their accounting systems, and the person that's running that accounting office is done for the day, as opposed to having to pack it up, fill out a deposit slip, take it to the bank, and then waiting for it to post on their side. So it's a big opportunity out there. And the reality is there's not a lot of people out there offering the service at this point. So it's an untapped market, especially where Jason just talked about. The B2B market is still very big out there.
Yeah, Evan,
Agreed.
I think oh, go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to say that absolutely right. For the ISO, leading with technology and bundling ACH really helps you stand out in the sales process, gives you a competitive advantage. It also helps you gain access to more sophisticated merchants, potentially higher volume merchants, the ability to add additional higher margins. But also on the back end, it helps with attrition. Providing automation to the merchant gives them tremendous added value. But at the same time, those technical hooks make it very difficult for a competitor to come in and poach your merchants simply by offering a discount of a few basis points or a free terminal. And then for the ISVs in the house, bundling technology and ACH really gives your software the ability to provide its users with a more complete billing solution, while at the same time reducing or eliminating your risk for PCI or other compliance regulations.
Absolutely. Evan, I know you had some thoughts on this when we were talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the key here is really adding value and increasing your bottom line, for your credit card processing ISOs, right? All or most merchants are currently sending and accepting bank payments today, which is why it's really important to partner with a bank payment provider that can help deliver these value-added services and also increase your revenue, right? I mean, we have low-risk credit card processing ISOs that are focused on retailers that benefit from being able to capture the additional sales volume from wholesale orders. We have high-risk ISOs that benefit from seamless onboarding, greater business type acceptance, no transaction limits, and greater protections against chargebacks. I think that it's really a no-brainer to contact a bank processing partner, who can help deliver these value-added services to your merchants while increasing your bottom line.
I'll add in that many of the banks today, when I speak to ISOs all the time, they go, well, their bank offers them check 21. Evan just hit the nail on the head. Is the reality is that most of the banks out there are not offering the limits that their merchants need in order to conduct their business on a regular basis. They put daily limits, weekly limits, monthly limits, check size limits on what they can process. And when they do come to Evan, myself, Jason, in that process, we actually look at the business, do the underwriting. We can look at them and go, this is what makes sense for their industry. Often the banks, they take the cookie cutter approach. If you fit outside the cookie cutter, we're not going to process that item for you. So they're not presenting a full solution for remote deposit capture or an ACH. And I know when I worked for banks for many years, quickest way to get fired was to set up an ACH account on that side, jokingly saying.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I saw somewhere in the community posts like yesterday or recently, somebody was talking about posting a $10,000 payment on Zelle, and they were running with complications with that. So I think there's a lot of potential for these services, but it's a matter of how do we go about them intelligently. I just wanted to think, one of the things that we are constantly thinking about at my company is at least for finance, is what's going on in Europe with their payment services directive. And they've really, the implementation was a little bit unique because of the coronavirus crisis we've had the last year plus. But, they were really moving into an area of account validation and credentialed login and credentialed information, and being able to initiate payments via bank credentials and find information, and do that through, it's a regulated approach, but I think it's a regulated approach designed to open it up rather than designed to kind of curtail it. And I'm curious, what thoughts you have on that. I know, Evan, you had some thoughts when we were talking about this before.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that merchants and consumers are becoming more comfortable providing their online bank username and password for both underwriting and to make payments online. And we think this is great on many fronts, because as the data provided can be used not only to authenticate bank accounts, but to help data recipients make better risk decisions. And on the merchant side, reducing fraud and returned items. So all good.
Looks like there is a question that did come up on it, and they were asking what's typical funding time on ACH. Jason, I'll throw it over to you and let you talk about it.
Absolutely. Standard funding time for us is 3 business days. So banks have 3 banking business days to report returned items. Typically, some of them will come back sooner than that, but they have 3 business days to report returned items. So the standard funding time, a net settlement, would be after 3 business days. However, depending on the use case and the type of merchant that's involved, funding times can be accelerated, with the caveat that might cause the merchant a little additional bookkeeping in the event that a late return needs to be reversed and things of that nature. So it just depends on, functionally speaking, the needs of the business and the industry that they're operating in.
Makes sense. Well, yeah, we've got a few questions in here, so I'll kind of start working through them. But if anybody else has additional questions, feel free to continue dropping them in the chat box. I think our first question here is, what's the best software or payments option for a security company who primarily takes checks and uses QuickBooks?
Candidly speaking, QuickBooks Desktop is a little more clunky, a little more sensitive to the client's PC. However, QuickBooks Online does have a lot of seamless integration options. And so at a minimum, you can synchronize your customers, you can synchronize invoices to send those out, you can synchronize payments back to QuickBooks Online in order to automatically post those to the customer account. So I think there definitely are ways to automate the billing process and the reconciliation through QuickBooks, preferably QuickBooks Online.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that? All right. Another question we had was, can you tell us about payment solutions that you find more requested to meet the ISV needs, and what integration looks like with Check 21 versus ACH?
I see iframes as being very popular, so that software vendor could maintain the complete user experience and the layout of their application, but at the same time reduce their scope of handling that sensitive information. A lot of times tokenization is used in conjunction with that. So those payment methods could be tokenized. They didn't have to touch the initial payment method at the beginning, but now their software can utilize those tokens in an API environment in order to handle whatever they need to, one-time payments or recurring payments or auto pay type transactions, any of those types of things.
I know for us, we have an API and SDKs that you're using for the imager of the check that a lot of ISVs are writing to from us directly to our application because of the fact that we bring in the guarantee. We're encrypting that data obviously as it comes over, but the biggest hurdle for most ISVs today is finding the use case scenario for the right merchants for Check 21. Does it make sense for that merchant to go that extra route, and do you have the business model that it makes sense in?
Great. Well, it wouldn't be a banking or electronic conference if we didn't have a question about crypto. So I will go ahead and ask this question, and it is: can a cryptocurrency be used for an electronic payment in a cost-effective manner? And I have my own thoughts on this, but I'll let you guys answer first.
I'll jump in. I think blockchain will have all kinds of opportunity to revolutionize software and the way we do business. I think we have a ways to go before it is wide scale and cost effective. But I definitely see potential for use cases, and specifically on blockchain.
I agree with Jason. I think there's big opportunity. I'm gonna actually go back to the check and say, checks have been around for a long time. My son at 21 years old couldn't find a checkbook if he had to. I think that it's going to be a generational piece as the older folks start to move out. Checks definitely will decline on that side, but they're still here and they're still strong. And crypto will slowly come along and be part of the payment process at one point.
Yeah, I think crypto's it's always an interesting conversation because everybody's got their thoughts, and I've always felt that it's a solution in search of a problem in many cases. But I think that, there is that potential for purchases. I would caution against trying to build something on the back of something like Bitcoin, unless time sensitiveness is not a major factor to you, because the time that it takes to settle those transactions just can't compete with our conventional payment methods. But I do think there's some potential in things like central bank digital currencies. They've been getting a lot of play. I think China is very close to having that all set up and ready to go. I believe in advance of the Olympics next year. So that's something to really keep an eye on in terms of how well do they build kind of a blockchain-based system that is centralized. And I think the main characteristic isn't necessarily can it be done cost effectively, but can it be done within a regulatory scheme that, isn't going to subject all of your payments to potential massive government regulatory scrutiny. Crypto is kind of a Wild West currency designed to avoid many of those questions, but we're reaching the point where it's so big that those questions are now front and center for most governments. I think that's all the questions we've received. And we've got a couple more minutes here. Any other last minute thoughts from the panel here? Okay, crickets. Well, with that, then I think I'll give everybody back an extra 1 minute of their day. But I want to thank everybody for attending. And if you have questions for the panelists, please feel free to reach out to them. There's contact information at the bottom of the page. And we hope that everybody enjoys the rest of the conference. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.